Welcome back, everybody. It is Wins Above Fantasy, episode 180. If you're joining us on the podcast, happy Thursday. Those of you on the live stream, recording a couple days earlier, welcome as always. Got a great show, kind of a classic WAF show here, looking at May risers and fallers, at least in the world of underlying metrics. We're going to be looking at old-fashioned barrel rate today. And Steve, it's kind of a tried and true. I know it's been out and around for a long time, but it never ceases to amaze me looking at this and seeing kind of the guys that are following script with the back of the baseball card and their underlying barrel rate, and then some that are a little bit surprising. So this is a Stav sheet show where Steve pulled the spreadsheet, and we got some guys who had strong Mays, or at least their Aprils were lower than their Mays, and then vice versa, where we have guys who seem to be performing really well in terms of barrel in April and then dropped off more than other players in the league. So it's going to be great. Got a handful of names to get into, and we can bounce around a little bit tonight. Steve, how's it going?
Good. It's funny that you say like an old school metric. It's
Right.
like,
We're
but it
old
kind of
school
is
now.
at this point, like with everything that's come out as far as like bat speed last year, then all the bat tracking data. So I mean, barrel rate kind of is like a tried and true
Ideal
you
plate
know
approach and all these
yeah
new ones, right?
yeah but I mean, it's kind of like what we'll into forecast into next week. If I had to look at one stat for hitters, it's barrel rate. If I had to look at one stat for pitchers, which we'll do next week, it's K minus BB. So I think it's good to keep it simple when, especially when you're like looking at comparisons of relatively small samples, right? Like a lot can change um, in a month, but just to look at, okay, here's a sample of batted balls, and there's a decent amount of sample of batted balls in a month, usually enough to have some signal, not just noise. um, but to keep it simple and look at one thing and say, okay, this is someone that's had a really good process over the month, and there's a decline in it. What do we think of that? And then someone that may have not have been performing as well, um, and then had an uptick. And I guess if we're buying it or not, or if there's a return to form that you can believe in. So it's a tried and true WAF classic special. We've looked at this all the time. We could sort of see what's going on, and if there's a guy that you thought was underperforming, and then it looks like they're turning it around, and maybe the surface stats or the results haven't quite caught up yet. You could use this as an indicator, and vice versa, right? If you're thinking about selling high in a guy, and maybe the overall season line looks good, but the underlying numbers are starting to fade a little bit, that could be a sign too. So I think it's a good exercise. We've done this for years now because of that, and excited to get into it. I think there's some really interesting names to talk about here both ways.
Yeah, it's a cool time of year to do it as well, because April, it feels like, of all the months, is always the noisiest production. It's overreaction season. May you start to settle in a little bit. Some of like the early, just if somebody's in a slump, I'm thinking of like on my own team, like Wilson Contreras. In April, it was like, oh, the sky is falling. And then, people start to right the ship a little bit or figure things out. And then the flip side of that is some of the buzziest names at the start of the year. When you see them on this list, you're like, oh man, we kind of bit. But it's also worth kind of assessing, do we let the pendulum swing too far? Is there still interesting things about these players? Which is kind of my segue, Steve, to get into the faller list. So I'll rattle these guys off, and then we can kind of pick on a few of them, and then of course we got the risers, which we'll close out with, which is exciting as well. But in terms of the strugglers, we've got Rafael Devers from April to May had the biggest drop off on barrel rate, which is quite surprising because of the fact that his May was insane with a 356 average, 33 RBIs. Like I had to look double, triple check. And I know he had some monster games in there as well that are kind of ballooning that. But yeah, his barrel rate actually dropped off in May. Some other ones near that top of that list were Fernando Tatis Jr., who very much struggled with the drop from 18% in April, give or take, down to 6% in May. So that was a big one. Ty France on that list, Jonathan Aranda, Andrew McCutchen. Some of these are, not as actionable, but Spencer Steer, Spencer Torkelson, both the Spencers. And then Sal Perez is a pretty fantasy relevant one, Steve, just with how many catchers are kind of sprouting up as fantasy viable, but Sal is still very much struggling. So when you look at this list, I think Austin Riley, I'm not sure if I mentioned him. He's another one that's, very fantasy relevant, but his back of the baseball card looks pretty good so far this season. When you look at this list, I've got a few names that jumped out at me, but I'm curious if you want to hone in on anyone in particular, kind of what your take is on the faller list here for barrel rate.
Yeah, I think it's important to give some context too. Like, yes, Devers was the largest faller on the list, but he went from a 24% barrel rate in April to a 10% barrel rate in May,
Sure.
which is still, good and just insane in April. I also think that was pretty high because he struck out a ton in April. So like the actual balls in play, this is barrel rate, like, over,
A
this
great
isn't
point.
barrel per, this is just from Fangraphs. It's not the barrel per batted ball event, which, still would have had a precipitous drop, but just, the fact that he struck out 40 times in 120 at bats and still managed 5 home runs, goes to show that, that could have inflated that barrel rate there. And also the fact that like a 10% barrel rate is still good. And he's honestly had like one of the best months of his career, like you were saying. So you kind of want to just gloss over that and not really pay too much attention to it. But what's really interesting with Devers that I just wanted to talk about, since it was a good segue to talk about him, is just his chase rate is just like something that we've been concerned about and has been in the back of our mind with Devers as he's sort of aged. It's just like, hey, he does chase a lot. That doesn't, he's still amazing and still worth a first, second round fantasy pick. But that's just something that has been in the back of everyone's mind, at least, guys that look at advanced stats and analysis of Devers. But it's the best chase rate of career, but his career by like 7%, which is pretty interesting. And the fact that he's able to keep a high barrel rate and have production like that while chasing less is really, really encouraging. It's just funny that everything that's going on with Devers and the position change and the
First
feud with the
base,
Red Sox, yeah, and he's managing to put together like one of the best starts to his career ever. And it's not like he's not swinging at all. His swing rate is only down like 2-3% from last year. It is less, but it's still not crazy. Like he's not just not swinging, right? He's actually swinging more in the zone last year than he was. He's swinging more in the zone this year than he was last year, while chasing 6% less of the time. So, really good combination there, right? Like you want to look at Z swing and O swing in tandem to give a better picture of what the hitter's actually doing in terms of making decisions. So, like, this looks really good for Devers. He was a great buy low. I don't think we like hammered that just because it looked so bad.
And there was some
It
like
probably,
injury, a little bit of injury
yeah,
concern too, I
the
think.
shoulder. I was very concerned about the shoulders. I was very,
Yeah.
very concerned about the shoulders. And that was what kind of kept me, prevented me from having any shares, and also like harping on the buy low because it just looked like it was something that was bothering him. But hey, I mean, he barely played in spring training, right? Like he was playing on the backfields for a bit. In spring training, got into like 1 or 2 games, so he just needed some time. And it paid off for those that invested or bought low because he's probably been like the best fantasy player over the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's a spirit of accountability. We both leaned Riley at the start of the season
Yeah,
and
I
over
definitely did.
Devers.
Mhm.
But some of that was the injury concern. Now that they're both here, because Riley is on this list as well, in April, a 19% barrel rate. In May, dropped down to 11%, which to your point, Steve, is still above league average. It's a little low for what you expect for Riley. And overall, his numbers look solid enough with the 273 average. He's got 10 homers, 773 OPS. But the way Devers just looks on all the Savant sliders and the month he just put up, I know it's kind of recency bias, but rest of season, not that it's that practical and like a challenge trade, but do you think that Devers is kind of leaping Riley in the third base ranks here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to put it into context, like an 11% barrel rate is still, um, you know, good enough for like top 75 in the league,
Okay.
for batted ball event. So, um, still good. Um, I don't know. Riley, I was big on him on buying him low last year. It's like kind of concerning that his line like looks exactly the same as his overall line did last year. 117 WRC plus. The 10 homers are good, but underwhelming for a guy that we were banking on for high 30s homers
Mhm.
over the last few years.
Max
Um,
EV is low this year compared to
yeah,
years past.
yeah. The hard hit is down a little bit, but still good. Like those max EVs and
Mhm.
that max EV is still good enough for it's actually not, it's not in the top 10% or anything like that, but it's still nothing that I'm like too concerned about. And the barrel rate is better than last year. The hard hit is still above 51%. It's close to 52%. So still really good. There's still a lot to like. Um, it's just a bit of a lower home run to fly ball, sort of in line with what he ran last year. He's not chasing. He's still making the same amount of contact. Like I think that we can still expect a prototypical Austin Riley 270 to 280 with at least 30 homers at the end of the year. And overall, I would think that it's a bit of a buy low here. Like the K rate's a bit elevated, but the swinging strike isn't offline from what it was at least last year, or even the 2 years prior. Um, when he struck out at a much more palatable 24%, 25% over the
Mhm.
last 3 years. So overall, yes. I mean, that's easy. Like, yeah, I would take Devers just considering how hot he's been, but I still think Riley is a good buy low. And we've seen this before. We've seen slow starts from
Yes.
him. It happened last year, and then when he finally got going, he got hurt. So I think
Yeah.
that Riley is definitely someone that I would be I would be interested in acquiring and potentially a bit of a discount if anyone's willing to give that.
Yeah, 2023 as well. He had a sub 800 OPS in April and in
Mhm,
May, and then it kind of
mhm.
clicked in, and he rattled off 22 homers in the next 3 months. So like he definitely is a guy that heats up in the summer. So yeah, I'm with you on that. But yeah, Devers and Riley, those guys are even. It's not even a true buy low, right? It's like a buy
No.
medium because he's been solid enough. But Fernando Tatis Jr., as much as you can buy low on a first round guy, that's kind of where we're at right now. Just an anomaly after an insane April. I think everybody was kind of, patting their own back for good reason in April with the 323 average, 981 OPS. And then in May, it's just, completely drops through the floor, a 184 average, 626 OPS. Uh, just the NBC San Diego Darnay Trip on Twitter had said it was the worst month of his career ever in terms of those marks. But that June is usually Tatis's best month. Uh, but I'm not sure if we want to just bank on the calendar being what'll fix Tatis here. I thought it was just interesting, Steve. I had not dug in that close on what was happening with Tatis, and there are a lot of people talking about how he brought a leg kick back on April
Mhm.
30th, which seems like literally the month split before this all kind of fell apart for him. So would love to say that's as easy as just kind of tweaking that back. But in the meantime, until he does, he looks completely lost at the plate right now. So it's one of those that you're probably slowly seeing your team like sink in the ranks if you have Tatis. So what do you do here if you roster him, and if you don't, do you kind of have the blind faith that it's Fernando Tatis? This is absolutely a buy low. Like, where do you fall on? I guess the as the CBS guys say, the worryometer, 1 to 10. 1 is like you're doing a flash sale on Tatis, versus 10, you're fully confident he's going to be the stud that you drafted him for. Where do you kind of land there?
I'm like an 8. Whereas like the first month it looked like, okay, like Tatis is going to throw his name in the hat, in the ring, for potentially being like a top 3 pick next year, and come back into something that we expected in 2021, 2022, when he was,
Volatile. Yeah.
yeah, and some of the best, one of the best players in the game, and had 40 homers, and it looked like he was potentially on his way to that. And like he talked about wanting to steal more, and how he missed that game, that part of his game, and how last year with that leg injury had held him back a bunch. But I think this is a sobering month to kind of put a little bit of dampers on those expectations. And maybe, Tatis, I still think is a first rounder, but a back end of the first round type of guy.
Sure.
Yeah, that leg kick thing is just super, super strange. Like, why? Like, it went from one of his best months to one of his worst, right? Like, why mess with that around April when that happens? I don't know, but I trust him more than myself and Twitter analysts, right? Like, you still have to give credit to the players that they know what they're doing, right? And there was a lot of talk about Tatis in the offseason about how his father asked him if he was a good hitter, and like the answer to that was, his answer was like no, because he had a hole in his game and would strike out a bunch, and or more than he wanted. And everyone's talking in April how he was letting the ball travel and still getting to power there. And it seems like something happened with this leg kick that quote unquote messed this all up. But I mean, messing it up is still, a 280 XBA, a 529 X slug, a 95th percentile average exit velocity, a 74th percentile barrel rate, 92 percentile hard hit rate. It's the ground balls right now that are a bit concerning. His ground ball rate is at 55%. That's like, 6% worse than any season in his career, and it was 48% in 2020, just 46% last year. So if he starts hitting the ball in the air more, it's also the worst pull air rate of his career. So he's not making the most out of his hard contact. And I don't know. I just think that Tatis is so good that he'll be able to adjust, and he could be a player that would be able to correct that, especially because the process stats are still really good. They're not elite. In the first month it was 90th percentile or better on all the Savant and pitcher list sliders. Now it's closer to 80th and better, which is still really good. But I don't know. I just would trust Tatis that there's going to be, for as bad as this month has been, I think there'll be one that's just as good on the other side.
I think so. Yeah. And I gave you the wrong scale. So you're saying you're like 2 out of 10 on the worryometer. You're not that worried. Yeah.
Yes.
And I agree. And where I was going with the volatility is like, even in those kind of prime Tatis years, he had some months that were kind of flirting with like, oh, he's hitting 224 and he's got a 690 OPS. Like, yes, this does look like the worst month in a vacuum, but I think it's the leg kick that concerns me most. But again, Twitter analysts, etc., if that is the issue, I think, who would you count on to fix it but an actual MLB organization and one of the best fantasy players, at least in the past like 5 years. So yeah, I think this is a good one to, just because of the fact that it's June, it's early enough in the season where if you do gamble on Tatis and it works out, I think it's a league winner type of situation. And if it does not, I kind of feel like, I mean, granted, you'd just be caught holding the bag because, Yeah, because it's you're not going to like move on from him or drop him or trade him after you already acquired him. But I do think that we've had a lot of these discussions of like it's still early enough where people are kind of hitting the panic button, and it seems like for the best players, it never happens. That's why I still owe you a RotoWare shirt for panicking on Juan Soto's high ground ball rate like last year and around this time of year. So yeah, I'm with you. I think Tatis is totally fine and worth the buy low. Segue to
If you look on the screen real quick, what I shared, I know that there was that tweet about it being Tatis's worst month of his career, but there has been a valley like this, back in 2023. I mean, even in 2024, that was, before he got hurt, he was on fire and then sort of came back down, back down to earth as far as like his rolling WOBA. So there has been these valleys, maybe for not as long. But and also, in 2023 it came off a bit of a higher peak there, which makes it seem a little bit less.
It's a good chart though. It just shows
but it just shows that there are these shapes to these seasons. And I'm not just going to take a hard pass on Tatis because he's a righty. I mean, there's been plenty of righties that have been the best player in the world. The best hitter like ever is a righty in Aaron Judge. So yeah, I'm done with that argument.
Right. Well, yeah, I think that going to another possible buy low, but a much more difficult one to. Here we are, 231 average, 622 OPS on the year for Sal, and you're kind of suffering through this while there's catcher production kind of all around, which makes it extra challenging. Yeah, I just noted in the rundown he had a 3-hit game on Sunday, but I think it was all singles. He's still hitting in a prime spot in what should be a pretty good lineup, especially with Caglione getting the call. What do we think with Sal? His barrel rate dropped from 16% in April, where he wasn't performing well, and we were kind of saying, "Oh, this is a buy low opportunity." Instead of the results catching up, the underlying metrics kind of fell down to where the performance had been. But granted, the 10% in terms of context is still, like you said, Steve, like, above whatever 60th percent, 70th percentile. But it's been frustrating for Sal Perez. So are we looking at kind of, what is a pretty old 35-year-old in terms of just mileage as still a bounce back, or are we kind of saying we're holding tight on this one?
Yeah, I mean, we were all about the Sal Perez bounce back and buy low a few weeks into April, right? And it's been not as clear, right? Just over the last few weeks, you would want that power to be there. That's sort of, you want him to be like a Cal Riley kind of light, right? And it just hasn't been there for him. But I don't know. It's so tough because you don't want to be the one holding the bag or call it a hot potato with an aging catcher, right? That has all this mileage on. But how many times before has this happened with Sal Perez where you look up at the end of the year and it's, close to 30 homers, an amazing amount of playing time because of just the fact that he plays every day, whether it's behind the plate, DH, first, wherever. So it's hard, but it's also, I guess still a little bit concerning, just considering those indicators that were there in April that said, yeah, this is obviously a buy low, aren't with May, and the performance sort of hasn't caught up. So I guess that's a hesitant. That's probably the guy I'm most hesitant on, just because of the age, because of the mileage. But Sal's proved me wrong plenty of times before. We'll see.
And yeah, I think just again the position itself, like you can look at so many catchers and say like if you covered up the name, you would be hoping that that was what Sal Perez would give you. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
and I know like Logan O'Hoppe is widely rostered, but like he's, huge power, but some K issues. Like there's a lot of these guys, Hunter Goodman, Langoliers, Moreno, like all these guys that contribute somewhere, and you just haven't been getting any contributions for Sal. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I think if there was an interesting catcher drop in my league, like a 12 teamer or something, I think I would be comfortable moving on from Sal, just because it's not like years past where if you give up your catcher to chase something, you sacrificed an advantage to where you had one of the four good catchers in the whole league. Like I think it's a year where you can play the carousel a bit more, I guess is my point. So yeah, I think I'm lukewarm on that. The other name I wanted to get to here, Steve, before we jump, is Kyle Manzardo, who we were excited about. April, he had the 16% barrel rate, and in May it came down to an 8.5% barrel rate, so kind of middling. But Manzardo felt like one of the ads early on this season. I mean, we had a couple shows where we talked about 8 or 9 guys, and we were like, yeah, Manzardo definitely seems like one. I know that this can happen, right? And he's still got 10 homers on the year, which is crazy. But yeah, it was a rough April. He's being dropped everywhere. It was a 192 average. Or I'm sorry, in April it was 192 average with the 6 homers, but in May it's been a 200 average, and it's the only 2 homers. So now you're not getting the pop, you're not getting the hit tool. You think it's time to move on for Manzardo, or do you still think like long term there's something here?
Yeah, I was super excited about Manzardo because it was like a guy with a high barrel rate that didn't strike out much, and those two, since we've talked about him, have gone the absolute wrong direction. And it's been kind of like an all or nothing low batting average. And a lot of those homers came early on, right? I would imagine that um, in
Yeah,
May,
that opening weekend or
he
whatever, he
had
went
he had
nuts.
8 homers in April, only 2 in May. And the problem was he still only hit 220 in April with those 8 homers, right? Um, but yeah, there's more swing and miss than I was hoping for and expected. Still an intriguing power bat. I mean, it's also like strange because when he had those 8 homers, it wasn't like a 20% barrel rate. It was like it was the 16.7, right? So it was clearly overperforming. But I still think there's some hope. Like the swing strike rate is not that bad at just 11.8%. Um, there's some really good numbers here in the minors, but I think maybe I was a bit blinded by that. And he's more of a poor man's Josh Naylor rather than like a full on Josh Naylor replacement, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Mhm. Interesting is from April to May still angle percentage, but that like skyrocketed in May compared to April. It went from like 45% up to 53%. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else to the story, because like his chase rates look pretty similar month over month. I mean, a slight increase in May. Um, so I don't know if it's contact. See where his fly ball rate is month over month. So that's gone down a little bit. So I guess
Mm-hmm.
it's just, yeah, his types of hits. Like he was trading out some fly balls for line drives. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't matter a ton because he's just like 18% rostered. So at this point, he's pretty widely available. I think it's probably just worth, like you said, Steve, just monitoring him as a possible power bat if he goes on another one of these
Mm-hmm.
heaters. I don't think we've really seen enough of Manzardo in general to know, like, is he a streaky guy when he catches fire like he did at the start of the season? Like, can you count on that the way you can with like a Jake Berger or something? But yeah, I think he's still an interesting player for like the big picture, but I think we'll have to see some results before we jump back
He's
on.
still playing every day between DH and first base. So,
Mhm.
um, not like the Guardians have so many options. But
Mhm.
there is CJ Kafis in the minors that has been a popular name, um, that potentially could um, cut into some of that playing time. But I still think that there is at least a guy that could give you a good amount of homers, but may not have the batting average upside that I thought was coming, or potentially to make him like 12 team relevant. I think he's still 15 team league relevant. Just probably not in shallow leagues, at least not right now until he goes on another heater.
Yeah. Yep. Well said. Well, I was surprised Junior Camanero's not on the riser list because he's been a savior for my home league team, and he just hit a homer. That's a segment tease because after
I think
this,
that was right after you. I don't know if that was on air or just to me.
I was
Talking
griping
about
about it. It
him.
was on
Yeah,
air. I
yeah,
was like, man, I just don't know if Caminero is going to do it. I'll give him through the end of, or what I say, up till All-Star break. And then it's
yeah.
like, we haven't seen him ever do it before. And now he's just
No,
gone
he's doing it.
berserk. So
Yeah,
what do
maybe I
I
should
know?
have said that about Tatis when we talked about him there. So,
Yeah, right.
yeah, I don't
Wish
think
it into
Tatis will ever get
existence.
back to it, man.
No, he won't.
Yeah,
Neither will Soto. All
yeah.
right. Well, we're getting to the risers, but we got to take our first ad break, and we'll be right back after this. All right. So, Steve, kind of the more optimistic side of the show here, that we save the best for last, and it is an interesting set of names. Some that we were very excited about, some that we've talked about on the show, some that you kind of have to look at and really squint and be like, is this truly a breakout, or is there enough opportunity here? But to rattle through the names, it's Riley Green, Gavin Sheets, Taylor Ward. Stop us if you've heard that before on a hot month. Miguel Vargas, Juan Soto himself, George Springer is looking very interesting in terms of the savant sliders. Michael Bush, Ryan McMahon, who you brought up, Steve. We still haven't seen that kind of production click in, but big jump for him, April versus May. Bobby Witt Jr., and then Michael Conforto, who still kind of has a case of the platoons with all the crowded nature of the Dodgers outfield. But that's the list of the biggest risers from April to May. If I were a betting man, I would say you're going to talk about Riley Green because we're pretty pumped about that. I know we both got shares, and you were all over Riley Green at the start of the year. It looks like he's doing it. But yeah, I don't want to point in a direction. Open table here, wherever you want to go with this list of
Yeah,
names.
I think that's a good one to start. And it's amazing because there's been some days that Riley Green has like had just a day off here and there, but AJ Hinch, the manager of the Tigers, has made some strange comments like, yeah, we're battling through a lot of stuff. Like, nobody's really, we have a lot of nagging injuries, got to get people right. And Green's essentially, continuing his breakout from last year, basically from this point on, right? Like Green, I think was a great buy low last year at this point because of all the underlying numbers. And that's really just continued. He's just been like we've just slowly see him blossom into like I think one of the best hitters in the league. I think
The
last year I
opposite.
made like
Yeah. Yeah.
Freddie Freeman sort of light comparison. I mean, there's definitely more swing and miss, and there's still a lot of swing and miss this year. It's a 31% strikeout rate, which is incredible considering he has a 271 batting average. It just shows how hard he hits the ball and how well he hits the ball. As far as like the sweet spot percentage, he has that sort of elite barrel rate you know, combination with hitting the ball at the right angles all the time that a lot of these guys with less power and shorter swings and less bat speed has. So it's a unicorn sort of profile. It is crazy how much swing and misses in this game,
That's
even
nuts.
compared to last year, right? Like last year, there was an improvement down to 27% in the strikeout rate. And we were like, okay, like maybe some more, improvement in that department could help propel him into, at least that's what I thought, to help propel him
Mhm.
into, a top 5 round fantasy stud. But he's still kind of doing it despite the K's, and a
Concerning,
bit of a,
honestly, a little bit
yeah,
concerning, but
it is a little concerning. It is a little concerning. The walk rate is also down too. So there definitely is some concern with the amount of swing and miss, but man, like just how much he barrels the ball, how good that lineup's been. I know you mentioned the 40 RBIs. Like the Tigers have been the top 5 offense in the league basically all year,
Gary
which is
Carpenter going triple
yeah,
bomb. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's so
That's just
cool how
been
many of his homers are like opposite field too. Like as a lefty, I don't know. It's just it's a shame that the plate discipline, and you know that I'm super sensitive on like those metrics, because if that looked better, then I think we're like ready to start
yeah,
anointing him like,
like
the next
stardom. Yeah,
Jordan Alvarez type of thing,
yeah.
which I think that was another one you mentioned, just with how pitchers were like super fearful of him.
Hmm.
But I don't think, remember we were saying like 25, maybe 30, like he's pretty ahead of the homer pace that we were hoping for, right? Because he's probably, I mean, just in terms of like the pro rating game, it's 60 games, so not quite triple that. But I guess he's on pace for
It's
probably
on
like
like a
30
30,
30 homers.
32, 35. That
Okay.
sort of area, which is kind of what we were hoping for. Like
Oh,
I
big
thought
time.
he did
Yeah.
miss some time. He had 24 and 137 last year, right? If he plays the full season, I think we're hoping for like a 30 plus homer season.
Hmm.
Um, it's just like he is swinging much more in the zone. He's chasing a lot more, almost 8% more than last year. So, and the swing strike rate has gone up a ton, from 11% to 14.5%. So there's a ton more whiff in this game, which like tells me that, yeah, this guy deserves a 32% strikeout rate. But I honestly didn't even know that was Riley Green's strikeout rate just because he's been that good.
Same.
Um, but I
I think it's
gotta
the average. The average is probably what will change,
yeah,
right? Because it's like a 271 average on Pitcher List. His X average is a 232. And a two. I mean, when was the last time saw a guy had 270 with like a 30%
really,
strikeout rate? Like
really,
one of
really
those.
hard to do. I don't know, like
Yeah, one
Tyler
of those
O'Neill
has
that
got to
one
change.
year,
Right, exactly.
it,
So one of those has to change, but hopefully, again, it's small sample sizes. Like maybe the K percent, maybe it's not as cut and dried as it looks, where it's like, oh, he's selling out on average for pop, or he's swinging way harder. Like maybe he can put it together because he's that young and that good of a hitter. Um, but yeah, the BABIP is
yeah,
355,
I was
which
gonna
he
ask,
hits the
what would
ball.
you think the BABIP is? That's not crazy. I would have, if I
No,
wasn't
and
looking at his
last year it
page, I
was,
would have guessed 400.
yeah, last year is 329. But just some of, like, again, going to the pitcher list stuff, like his ideal plate appearance is like barely 50th percentile, like, and he's hitting like a 90th percentile hitter.
Yeah.
So I think if he keeps this approach, it's probably going to look closer to like the 245 to 55 range
Hmm.
in terms of average. But if you're getting 30 homers plus with all these ribbies, I think you'd take it anyway. So yeah, Riley Green, it's nonetheless been awesome. So just interesting to see what happens from here for the plate discipline. The one I kind of wanted to bring up, Steve, and just assess in real time is George Springer, because Springer in terms of the barrel rate in April, it was 11.3%, which in and of itself is good, if not very good. And then in May, it was up to 23.5%. Um, Springer has yet to really like put it all together in terms of the true production. And in May, even though the barrel rate was that high, he hit just 209 with an 820 OPS. But last week he kind of went off, and there was a lot of like, he was on the most added list and all that good stuff. He had 3 homers last week. But yeah, now he still just has 8 on the season, despite putting in what is very easily his best StatCast season since like 2020, maybe even
Hmm.
2019, like prime Springer. So he's such a vanilla name, you know what I mean? Like I actually have some shares because I had him like kind of chunked in with like the Cedric Mullins. Like, you remember I wasn't crazy about outfield, and I was like, just get me some guys who are going to get regular tick and help with like best ball leagues. But now it looks like there's a possibility, if the underlyings are real, that Springer could have like one of his better years in a while. So curious where you're at with Springer. Now at a 19.5% barrel rate on the season. What do we think here for the 35-year-old George Springer?
This is the best hard hit rate percentage of George Springer's career, and it's not even close. Previously, it was 44.8% in 2019, like the rabbit ball. It's 50% this year. So it's just pretty crazy how well he's doing, at least under the hood, as far as the quality of contact. He's added 2 miles an hour of max EV this year from last year. You mentioned the barrel rate increase from 9% last year, and really like hovering around 9 over the last 3 years, back to 19.5%, which is another 5% percentage point better than it's been in his career. I don't expect that to continue. And a lot of this, you can kind of get caught up in, like, all right, you're just sort of like this list that we put together is guys that did well in April, then not in May, and
They're
did well,
hot.
and they're just hot. But I mean, the barrel rate is still an indicator of success in a way, right? And
I think what's interesting though is like, and sorry to interrupt, but like, it's like his average dropped from April to May from 286 to 209. And what's crazy to me is when now that we've had bat speed a little bit, you can look at it. And while it's only up 1 mile per hour from last year to this year, which is still something like that, it doesn't take a lot of change on bat speed to be like, oh, this is significant. But month over month this season, it is just like a straight line up. Like he is swinging harder month over month. And, maybe it's kind of a roller coaster that you don't want to be on the ride. Like when Joey Votto was kind of doing crazy tinkering at the end of his career. And like there were a season or two where that really worked. And everyone was like, man, at age 36, and I know Springer isn't Votto, I'm not saying that, but it looks like there are things that are happening where, like, I don't know, it would be, I don't think I'd be shocked to see him hit 25 if these numbers are real. I mean, a 20% barrel rate is insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's an indicator of health, right? And you're right. It's went from 72.6 to 73, and then in June, I mean, it's not that many swings in June, but 73 and a half. So maybe he's getting healthier. He's getting more comfortable. Springer is. So I mean, it looks like it's just. I was in on Springer last year. I just thought he was great, like oatmeal and just like boring,
Right.
veteran, fourth, fifth outfielder. And he was just, and it was just a blind spot. He was just so bad that I just did not even consider him at all this year. And now it looks like he's sort of having a late season renaissance. The Blue Jays offense has picked it up a lot recently. And Springer's been a part of that. I mean, him and Bichette have both had pretty good bounce backs. Definitely not something I've expected. And it looks like Springer can give that sort of, at the very least, the 2023 season where he had 21 homers, 20 steals. But maybe that comes with a bit better, overall slug and counting stats with that, right? He's slugging 60 points higher than he did in 2023 when he had those 21 homers and 20 steals. So, yeah, I think this is looking like a great waiver wire ad, just because he was sort of an afterthought in draft seasons in shallower leagues, and
people move on quick
in April. Yeah.
And
from that type of player, you move on quick. Yeah,
right. And that's what will happen next. Like it'll take 2 or 3 offers for people to move off. And I think more than anything, it's just to make a mental note that this isn't at least currently, this isn't the George Springer under the hood that we've seen for like 3 or 4 years. So yeah, it's got my attention, if nothing else. 60% rostered in Yahoo leagues. We've got a few more names that we're getting to, but we're going to take our second ad break, and we'll be right back after this. All right, so Steve, one that we talked about very recently, but we got to bring him up again. His name keeps popping up, is Miguel Vargas. Man, he was near and dear to the WAF heart a couple years back when one of the more excited prospects that we talked about on the show.
Yeah, he was a
But
WAF guy.
yeah, big time. And then obviously it didn't go well. And then the move to the White Sox, he misses out on a World Series, all that fun stuff. And it was so dreadful for Vargas, even spanning before this season. But in April, he had a 217 average with a 598 OPS. And in May, it looked very good. I would say a 263 with an 899 OPS, but saw just a crazy split that was looking at like his first 60 games with the White Sox. And he was batting like 158 or something like that. And since then, it's like 300 and, amazing numbers. And this one kind of similar to where we were talking about the leg kick for Tatis. When these milestones timing wise sync up exactly with a change, it always, and maybe I'm a sucker for like the batting stance tweaks. I've fallen into that trap before, but from April to May, there was a nice little piece on MLB Network where the guys were kind of breaking this down, and clear as day, you can see the photo. I don't know, Steve, if we can pull it up in the StreamYard for the live stream, but he moved his hands higher and kind of has his elbow kicked back more, and it is a definite tweak. I mean, it is a very different stance, and yeah, I mean, it seemed like it flipped the switch where Vargas's barrel rate, which had been almost non-existent. We talk about context, but his barrel rate in April was at 6.9%, and in May up to 14.5% pretty much. So he went from well under league average to well over league average. And if this is real, lineup context aside, he's still hitting third for the White Sox. And this is a guy that, 18 months ago, we were kind of viewing as someone that could really be a fantasy contributor. So Vargas is, similar to Springer, where the stuff under the hood really has my attention. And I think because of the White Sox, because Vargas has kind of built us up to let us down in the past, it's not going to take much. I think he's had a couple offers in his past like 2 or 3 games, and already you start to see that a ton of people are dropping him. His percentage rostership is plummeting from 48 to 43% and counting. But this is one that it's going to take kind of sustained bad results for me to no longer be interested, because I think the swing change and him popping up on this barrel jump list has my attention. So are you also excited about Vargas? Where are you with this one?
Yeah, I think we talked about him either last week or 2 weeks ago, and I'm pretty interested. You can see that on the screen there, the change in the hand position, and it's hard to argue against results, and I know that is tricky, and sometimes it's sort of it's confirmation bias, right? And in that sometimes like the results happen, oh, there was this change, this is why it's happening, it's for real, when maybe it's just sort of coincidence that a streak
Sure.
Coincides with the change. But hey, I mean, baseball is also a mental game too, right? So maybe if that's not directly leading into to the results, but it's it could play a part in a way that we may not be able to quantify. But it's interesting because this is sort of coming together as to what we were hoping for when we saw in the minor leagues, and that's a low strikeout, a decent barrel rate at 10.6%, which he came nowhere close to in any of his stops in the majors before. He's improved the strikeout rate, and I think that this could be sort of like, maybe not I know Bregman was like a first, second rounder in certain years, but maybe a little bit of of an Alex Bregman light. I don't know if he has that, bat control and barrel control to get the most out of his barrels, where, Bregman had he had a 40 homer season, right? I don't think that's ever going to be possible for Vargas, but he is pulling the ball in the air. 22.4% is a good number there. That's, steadily increased over his career. The ground ball rate is almost like too low at 28%. Like there's a lot of fly balls. So actually, it's not a lot of fly balls. There's a lot of line drives, which you kind of were hoping for from this profile for Vargas. So I don't think you should really let the slow start fool you. I mean, it's still been really good for Vargas over the last few weeks here, and it's not going to be a bright red Savant page. It's not going to be a bright red pitcher list page, but I think it's going to be good enough. There's not swing and miss. He's able to take a walk, and now that he has an above average barrel rate, like I think he'll be able to tap into some more of that power that we were sort of projecting and hoping for when we liked him as a prospect. So I like Vargas a lot, and I think that team context aside, there is a decent fantasy player in here and someone that I think is going to be worthy of rostering, even in like 12 teamers for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, it's just the profile. Just looking at some of these stats, he and Ketel Marte, there he is, are the only two hitters that had a sub 15% strikeout rate and a 300 ISO in May. Like with that happening at the same time as the swing change, and they brought up on the MLB Network. I mean, they had quoted saying in the MLB Network era, this might be the biggest swing in season swing change that they've seen. And yeah, I'm ready to be burnt again, Steve. I think I'm on the Vargas hype train. I don't know if it's, yeah, I mean, obviously it's not all going to look like the month of May, but I think that this could be a legitimate breakout, that at the end of the year, when we kind of look back on breakouts, Vargas is one of them. So yeah, we'll see if I look silly with that one, but I think that I always like the profile, and he does have like the plate discipline stuff. He hits doubles when he doesn't hit home runs, so I think runs are kind of a sneaky ad for him as well. So yeah, I'm excited about Vargas.
All right, let's do some would you rathers with Miguel Vargas.
Yeah.
Currently on the player rater, he is the 15th rated third baseman. Around guys like Josh Smith, Zach McKinstry, Josh Young. Would you rather have Josh Young or Miguel Vargas for the rest of the season?
Oh man. Yeah, I would definitely in my home league, which kind of plays like a points league. I would rather have Vargas because of the plate discipline you get with it. But I think even in a 5x5, I'm going Vargas on this one.
Okay. Jose Caballero and Dylan Moore, I'm not gonna do that just because they're sort of super util guys.
Right.
They're slightly above him, and you probably play them all over. But the next one I think is a good one. Miguel Vargas or Matt Chapman? Who'd you rather have?
So Chapman is, yeah, he's gonna
He's
get
sort of
more
doing the Matt Chapman, decent power, chipping in a few steals, low average, typical Matt Chapman.
I'm going Vargas because of the mystery box a factor that I think we could have average and similar pop. Although Vargas is not, he doesn't run, right?
No, that's not something that he's had one steal on the year. I think he's been caught once or twice.
Chapman does kind of chip in. So yeah, I think that one's getting closer, but I think I'm still going Vargas.
Okay. Miguel Vargas or Isaac Paredes?
Okay, there's the cutoff because I'm in on Paredes.
Right,
yeah, he had himself a nice little bounce back as well in May, going up to like the 852 OPS, 7 homers. Yeah, that one's looking better for us.
Yeah, it looks
what's the next name? Just
so the next name is actually Austin Riley. Then it's Miguel Garcia, and then it's like Junior Caminero, Alex Bregman, and Machado Suarez.
I think I found my spot for him is above Chapman, below Paredes, but still.
So that's the top 10 third baseman for the rest of the way. That's pretty interesting.
That's where I'm at. It's just, I think it's somewhat hot takey, but I'm a sucker for the swing change, and I always like the player. Last one, at least I wanted to talk about, Steve, is Taylor Ward, and I say it and like can't help myself.
I just let out a sigh too. Naturally,
because it just seems like every year we do this. I did go through monthly splits of every single month for Taylor Ward because I was like, what was the month? And I think it must have been more like a week or 2 weeks where he went berserk because what we saw this past month with 10 homers is the high watermark in terms of like a monthly homer binge, even for a guy who's known to do this and be super streaky. Yeah, he hit 255 in May with 10 homers, a 940 OPS. That was after May, where his average was at 175. But even then, he had 6 homers. So now he's at 16 homers on the season, which is just crazy for Taylor Ward. Again, you talk about like loud performance in April and kind of May it settles out. I don't know about you, but it's like I had a double take and be like, oh, Taylor Ward's already at 16 homers. So it seems like the common reaction and definitely the industry take is like, go sell high. He's going to tank. This is what he does. But do you think with, what we're seeing with the barrel rate where it jumped from 12% up to 20%, from April to May, that there is still something here for Taylor Ward? I mean, I feel like we know who the player is by now, but it's hard to ignore, the run that he's been on.
I wish I remember who said it in the Pitcherless Discord, but someone was like, "Nobody gets hot like Taylor Ward gets hot," and I'm butchering the way they eloquently said that, but it's kind of true. He has these unbelievable stretches. This is another good one. I'll bring it up on the stream where you could look at his rolling game averages, and it's just absolute peaks and absolute valleys, and it's just that's over just the last 3 seasons, right? Like they're really really steep. Like even from the beginning of this year when Ward was sort of dropped everywhere, like he hadn't been that low, or he has been that low even as soon as last year, a few times in 2023. And then this peak too, like he was there seemingly at the end of the last year. It is kind of interesting, and that sort of makes me wonder, like, hey, if these peaks come closer together, maybe that's a sign of health, and the fact that he was hot at the end of last year, and now sort of is doing it again. Maybe there is a bit of health. I know he's battled concussion syndrome a bunch before, and just various injuries, and has a hard time staying healthy. But I don't know, like even when Ward goes on these runs, like he does sort of leave you wanting more, other than like, those first few months of 2023 when he was sitting for average, I think maybe before he got hurt. So there is, it is overall still just a flawed player. But I don't know. I think that if Kyle Manzardo is like an unrosterable, low power, high average guy, like Ward is definitely in someone that you want. Maybe like Byron Buxton without the steals, healthy.
Sure.
Those sort of seasons. Like he's going to win you weeks with homers and head to head. There's no way unless he gets hurt. He doesn't finish with 30 homers at this point. He's got 16 as we sit here on June 3rd. So I think Ward is definitely someone that's worth rostering, and you may just have to bench him from when he goes into those stretches, because another one of those valleys is probably going to come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's just interesting that he comes with the high Ks, but his chase rate is really good. And it's like you see the chase rate, you see the raw power. Well, I mean, you see the barrel rate. I guess it's consistent power. Like honestly, his max exit velocity isn't that.
What do you think his
impressive.
swinging strike rate is? He's got a 27% strikeout rate. What do you think his swinging strike rate is?
You would think it's like 13, 14%.
7.9%.
That's nuts.
That's like one of the best in the league.
So then what are we talking about? Like, how is he a 213 hitter when he's got a great chase rate and a 16% barrel rate?
He's just not swing. Yeah, I mean, he just doesn't swing. He's a 39% swing percentage. Like he just
he's got like one of the biggest cold strikes. Okay. Yeah. That's so bizarre.
He's a 31%. He's a 31% CSW with a 7.9% swinging strike rate. He's a 23% called strike rate. So he just, maybe that's how he's getting into his homers too, right? He could just be just like waiting for specific pitches, and when he gets them, he hits a homer.
It's true. Yeah.
But there's a lot of, okay, this is a strike, but I'm not swinging at it because I can't hit a homer, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's encouraging that yeah, it looks like honestly, he's just like maybe swinging out of his shoes on like breaking balls. Like he has a 420. He has 7 homers on breaking balls, like a 427 slug and a 159 batting average on it. So it's like, yeah, he had 13 hits against breaking balls, and 7 of them are homers. So
So
there's
more than half
kind of
as
the
half as
feast
yeah.
or famine thing. But yeah, I'm with you. You ride the hot hand. Hunter Renfroe is another like archetype that
Yeah,
comes to
yeah.
mind. That it's like, oh, when it was bad for him, it's brutal. But then you you always get stuck like facing that guy in head to head, and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy's killing me. So yeah, I think Ward. I'm just curious where his roster percent is. I mean, obviously he's been going nuts, so it's got to be pretty
He's
high.
kinda cooled off, so I think it's probably on, back
That's
on the downswing.
85%. So
Oh,
he
wow,
is so it is
85%.
pretty high, but,
Yeah.
yeah, that's his rostership probably looks like his rolling ex-Woba charts too,
Yeah.
though, where it's like it'll go up to 80 and then it'll come down to
Yeah.
like 50. So, yeah, it's a good name to call out and monitor.
That would be a fun graph to make, like, Taylor, if you could
It
throw up
would
a
be.
rostership percentage
Oh,
with a rolling, like, a rolling 15-day rostership with a rolling 15-day
yeah,
WOBA,
you
that would
got
be
you spiked it with the, Byron Buxton. I feel
yeah. But
like,
you know what would be funny? Like, the rostership would trail the WOBA, right? Like, it would be, the 3 homer game, people then add and miss that part, and then,
100%.
they're
That's a
there for the
data.
downfall, yeah.
We need to hit that to the data thread
The
on
data
Pitcher
science
List.
team,
The
yeah.
data science team is who's the most frustrating player in fantasy,
Mhm.
and it's based on their rostership being an inverse with their charts. Oh my god. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anybody else on the riser list that you wanted to hit on, Steve? I feel like that's a good list. I know you called out Gavin Sheets, and that was a big jump from 4% barrels in April up to 15% in May. But yeah, just curious if there are any other names that really jumped out that you wanted to hit on.
No, I think Gavin Sheets was interesting, like, he just had a hot spring, and the Padres outfield was like, I mean, who'd they bring? They have Jason Hayward, and they brought in, like, Connor Joe, I think, so, like, there was just a lot of opportunity there, and, like, he was raking,
Mhm,
so it was like, "Okay, I'm going to throw him on a few of my teams as a dart, later in draft season," and that's sort of, carried over,
mhm.
I mean, he's been good. Um, I don't know if it's sort of like league winner type of good, but there's quite a few swing and miss. There's quite a bit of swing and miss in his game, but I think he could be sort of
Poor man's
uh
O'Hearn or something.
yeah, or like Rohon or Hearn last year, maybe with a little bit more power. Like, he already has 11 homers. He did have a slight injury. I know he's back in the lineup today. He collided with the wall and missed the game on Monday, I believe it was. But hopefully that doesn't, like, um, derail him from what's been a pretty hot start. So that's good to see. I think that there is definitely a talented bat there in Gavin Sheets. And it's nice to see that the results are following with this opportunity that's been given.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, unlike some of the other names, like I think the strikeout rate is in check, and yeah, he obviously mashes righties. So, um, yeah, I think he's right in that mix of like the platoon guys that can help you
Yeah,
out a little bit.
he's like a slightly better strong side platoon guy. Like, not a Kerry Carpenter, but, like,
Yeah,
also
yeah.
not like a you know
I think you'd
sit
rather
versus heavy lefty type of guy.
for like a util, Conforto's on this list. Would you rather have Gavin Sheets or Michael Conforto?
Man, I know Conforto can go like in fuego, but he's been so bad so far. I would lean Sheets
Yeah.
over Conforto. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree with that at least. Yeah, the way it's the season's going so far. So cool. Well, yeah, that wraps up the list of the risers as well. So yeah, this is a fun show, Steve. And then next week we're gonna do something similar for looking at pitchers as well. So you guys can join us on the live stream. Are we thinking Tuesday, Wednesday next week, Steve? We don't have to commit.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. I think maybe even potentially a Monday if that may work for you, but we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, and then the show every week on Thursday for the
Thursdays, yeah.
podcast as well. So, thank you
Yeah.
guys all for joining us. Hope your Mays were nice little bounce backs as well. I know mine was, and yeah, we'll be back next week. Until then, thanks for talking baseball with us.
Thanks for listening, guys. Later.